This Notebook LM video explores how societies throughout history have created an enemy within to consolidate power and justify persecution. From the Crusades to the Inquisition and beyond, leaders defined categories of us versus them, spread atrocity stories to demonize groups, and institutionalized prejudice into law.
You know, when you look back through history, from the Crusades to the Inquisitions, and even to more recent conflicts, you start to see this really dark pattern emerging again and again, the creation of an enemy. It's this process where societies, usually led from the top, decide who the other is, make them seem like a threat, and then go after them.
And that brings up a really big question, doesn't it? Why? Why does this happen so consistently? What is it about societies that seems to create this need for an enemy inside the gates? All right, let's get into it.
So, there's this concept from historian R.I. Moore that's super helpful here. He calls it the persecuting society. And the core idea is this. Persecution isn't just some random burst of hatred. Nope, it's a calculated strategy. It's a tool that the people in power use to solidify their control. Think about it. By creating an out-group to attack, you shore up your own authority and keep everyone else distracted and divided.
So how do you even start this whole process? Well, the very first step is to draw a line in the sand. You have to create the categories of us versus them. And so often, that begins with telling people what they are and are not allowed to believe.
And this is a really important distinction. On one side, you've got heresy, which is basically disagreeing with the system while you're still in it. But on the other side, you have apostasy, and that's walking away from the system altogether. Now, to the powers that be, both of these were huge threats, but apostasy, that was seen as the ultimate betrayer.
But here's the thing. Just saying a group is different isn't enough to get people on board with persecuting them. You have to make them seem dangerous. And that's where atrocity tales come into play. These are stories, sometimes true, often completely made up, that paint the target group as monsters, as people who break all the rules of civilized society. The goal is to make them seem so evil that they deserve whatever's coming to them. Okay, so you've defined your enemy, and you've made everyone scared of them. What's next? Well, now you have to build the actual machinery to control them. This is where those hateful ideas get turned into systems, and prejudice gets literally written into the law.
And what's just wild is how methodical this all is. First, you just isolate a group, point them out, like they did with the Cathars in France. Then you legislate, you create actual laws against them. From there, you institutionalize it. You build entire organizations, like the Inquisition, whose whole job is to enforce these rules. And the final step? You segregate them, making that exclusion permanent and inescapable.
This quote, wow. It really shows you just how powerful these legal traps were. This papal bull from 1559 basically said that anyone, even the Pope himself, could be stripped of their power if it was discovered they'd been a heretic at any point in their life, even before they got the job. Can you imagine the kind of paranoia that creates? No one was safe. And this escalation really hit a new level with this concept in Spain, limpieza de sangre, or purity of blood. This was the endgame for making exclusion permanent. Because all of a sudden it wasn't about what you believed, it was about who your grandparents were. Even if you converted to Christianity, that stain in your bloodline meant you were locked out forever. This is where religious persecution starts to look a whole lot like modern racism. So when you have these incredibly detailed systems for defining, demonizing, and controlling people, the result is pretty much inevitable: violence. And we're not talking about small skirmishes, we're talking about centuries of absolutely brutal warfare fought over religious identity. I mean, this timeline here barely scratches the surface, but it gives you a sense of the devastating scale. You have Christians sacking another Christian city in 1204, a whole crusade against the Cathars, the 30 Years' War, which just wrecked Central Europe, and it goes right up to our own time with the Troubles in Northern Ireland. The Fourth Crusade is such a perfect, if tragic, example of this. You have a Crusader army that's supposed to be going to the Middle East to fight for their faith. But instead, they get sidetracked by politics and greed, and they end up attacking and completely looting Constantinople, the biggest, wealthiest Christian city on the planet. It was an absolutely stunning act of Christian-on-Christian violence. But when you talk about sheer destruction, it's hard to wrap your head around something like the 30 Years' War. The numbers are just staggering. Somewhere between 4 and 12 million people died. To put that in perspective, some areas of Germany lost over half their population. It was one of the most destructive conflicts in all of human history.
But here's the part that really gets you. Look at how people died. Only about 10% of the deaths in that war came from actual fighting. The other 90%, they died from disease that swept through armies and refugee camps, and from starvation as soldiers just pillaged the land. The real victims of this war weren't the soldiers. They were the civilians.
So, what does this all mean for us today? Well, these historical patterns, they haven't just vanished. Their echoes are all around us. But at the same time, we are starting to see some attempts to actually face this dark history. It's really a mixed picture, you know? You still have deep tensions in places like Northern Ireland that are a direct result of this history. But then you also have these incredible moments of healing, like when the Lutheran Church officially apologized for persecuting the Anabaptists hundreds of years ago. And yet, at the same time, that old legal machinery of persecution, it's still running.
And this is not ancient history. Just look at this. In several countries today, the act of apostasy, of simply leaving your religion, is still a crime. And in some places, it is punishable by death. The idea that the government can force you to believe something is very, very much alive.
Which really leaves us with this final, nagging question. The labels might not be heretic or apostate anymore, but have we really, truly gotten past this fundamental need to create an other, or have we just gotten better at finding new targets to define ourselves against?